welcome to Video Hell Show. Happy fall. Today we're here for a very special occasion. It is another triple header episode. I know it was tough to get through the first time, and it's probably going to be a little bit easier this time because the movies were way better. Spoilers, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Today is the first all-female lead triple header. Today I'm going to focus on 3 different movies, as you can see, laid out here in front of me, that all have female leads, all have very interesting stories, I'm not going to lie. I think these are going to be very different from what you're used to seeing so far here on the show, in a really good way. I think these really took me by surprise in a lot of ways, not so much this one. We'll get there. It was a really good viewing experience for a change. And I also felt it was really appropriate today to showcase some films with some female-led talent because so far most of the ones I've focused on were all with male leads. And I just wanted to, give proper representation out there. I think that's important. With that in mind, we're going to talk about 3 films. That's 4. Today we're going to talk about these 3 films, the first of which being On the Block, followed by Stunt Woman, and last but not least, Touch and Go. Don't get me wrong, some of these movies have a little bit of a dated way of treating women, but at the same time, I think that all of the leads were meant to be shown as very strong. And not only that, I think that they're way ahead of their time in a lot of ways. But also, I think it showcases some of the problems that we've had in society and how far we have come if we look at some of the media today. But also that for a long time, there were female leads in film that they kicked a lot of ass. So I think we're here to talk about that tonight. First, I'm going to talk about On the Block. As usual, I'll start by reading a little bit off the box here. On the front, it says, this is a screener, by the way. I don't really know that this was released on film. It's a Vidmark film, so I think it must have seen a wider release at some point. Not for rent or sale. I managed to purchase it. But on the front, it says, the only game in town is survival. Not a bad tagline, I guess, as far as taglines go. Read a little bit off the back of the box here as well for you. Gritty, ambitious, and honest. It puts you on the block so vividly you feel your feet sticking to the floor.
No time, right here. 20 girls, ain't no dogs in here. Try to smile.
Beautifully played by Marilyn Jones. Good pull quote from The Sun in Baltimore. On the Block thrusts you into the steamy atmosphere of Baltimore's notorious red light district. In this gritty, realistic look into the obsessed love, greed, and betrayal. Starring Marilyn Jones as the stripper trying to rebuild her life, Howard Rollins as the powerful and dangerous developer whose goal is to reduce the Howard Rollins as the powerful and dangerous developer whose goal is to reduce the clubs to rubble. And a special appearance by Blaze Starr. On the Block is a film noir look at the shadowy outcasts who inhabit the brutal subculture of sex and drugs. I think that's a fairly decent synopsis. Next, I'm going to read a little bit off of the box for Stunt Woman here. Starring none other than Raquel Welch. Everybody knows and loves Raquel Welch. Stunt Woman. This hilarious offbeat love story explodes across the screen.
Hi, Doris. Did you see Jane lately? You know, that pain in the ass that used to follow me around?
Oh, you! Oh!
With spectacular stunts and flaming passion, stunt woman Jane Gardner, Raquel Welch, falls out of love with her fiancé, stuntman Michael Gaucher, faster than she can fall out of a second-story window when Gaucher accidentally ruins their wedding plans. It's a long sentence. Gaucher uses his non-stop antics and quick daredevil wit to try and win Jane back. In the meantime, he gets the break of a lifetime, a top-paying stunt job in a blockbuster action movie. Follow Gaucher and Gardner in their zany pursuit of fame, fortune, and each other. I'm just gonna let you know, the movie doesn't quite live up to how that made it sound, but we'll get there. Last but not least, I'm gonna read off of the box here for Touch and Go.
It's touch and go. It's touch and go.
This was a real surprise movie. I really enjoyed it. Just about as much as I enjoyed On the Block. But Touch and Go, A Caper with Class. Starring Wendy Hughes. Wendy Hughes. I believe it's... I'm stupid. I believe it's Hughes. Starring Wendy Hughes. Off the back here, just a little bit. Larceny for a Cause. Don't get caught with your pants down. Oh, Jesus. Touch and Go. Also starring John English as Frank Gardner. Produced... Is that Gardner again? Did we get another Gardner? Was there a Gardner in one of these movies? Yeah. Holy shit. I didn't realize that till just now. There's a Gardner in this movie and a Gardner in that movie. How about it? John English as Frank Gardner. Produced by John Palat and directed by Peter Maxwell. Dive into this comedy caper with 6 beauties in wetsuits. Their plot is to hijack a yacht in the Gold Coast in order to crack the safe of an impenetrable luxury resort/casino. For charity? Wendy Hughes, of Careful, He Might Hear You, is the leader of this fearless pack of respectable but bored women who, with a touch of James Bond, a pinch of Robin Hood, and a helping of Charlie's Angels, risk their freedom for a cause célèbre and get away with it almost. It's touch and go from the start to finish, with great fun and excitement along the way. So I think that's a decent description. So let's get to it. So first I'm going to talk to you here about On the Block, which I think was actually a really good, really compelling movie. I was glued to the screen the whole time. It was really well done, really well directed. Just to give you a little bit more information, this was a Snakeskin Pictures film presented by Steve Yeager. On the Block, starring Marilyn Jones, Jeffrey Whiddon, Michael Gabel, and introducing Erika Borgen, featuring Howard Rollins, with a special appearance by Blaze Starr. This was produced by Barbara Talbot. Let's see who the director was here. Produced and directed by Steve Yeager. So this was a Vidmark entertainment film, 96 minutes. So the very first opening scene is a cold open on a very slow push-in towards a woman who is very sick, obviously, here in her bathroom. There's a really nice top light. It looks like a really dingy bathroom. Obviously, she doesn't have a lot of money. Pushing in on this woman who's puking, in the toilet, very sick. We know from, reading the back here that she's a stripper trying to rebuild her life. If that's the case, and we know this is probably going to be the main character, I'm assuming it's some kind of drug withdrawal she's going through or something like that. Turns out that is exactly what happens. This movie has a really big theme having to do with heroin. So after the cold open, we get a really cool title. There's no music, it's just on a black screen, and it's neon lights saying On the Block at an angle. It's actually really cool. I really like that. We don't get anything else, and then we just go straight into the movie. We see our lead, who was sick there in the bathroom at the beginning, walking down the street, and she goes into a hotel to get a room. After which, we get a really cool title sequence to her walking down the street, coming out, striking a cigarette on the street, walking down the street in what obviously looks like the red light district.
Have a drink. Walk right in. Go past.
And she walks into a strip club to get a job. Obviously, you know from the description that she's a stripper, but I didn't really read the back of the box before I watched the movie. Sometimes I just pop them in and I want to see what happens. So I didn't know that she was a stripper yet until she went in and asked for a job dancing. The guy behind the counter, obviously, is, I guess, the one running the show. I don't really know anything about strip clubs, so I'm assuming maybe the people that work behind the bar are the ones, especially back in the 80s, that were running the joint. I don't know anything about that. But so she goes up to the guy behind the bar and she goes, I want a job. He says, I think he thinks that she's there to get a job for waiting tables or something, and he says there's nothing.
Looking for work.
No work on the streets?
I don't work the streets.
3 girls and no show? You want to dance? You can dance. First set's your audition. I ain't paying for your audition.
It's my action on drinks.
We'll type your action on the drink as soon as I see your action on the stage.
Or he asks her at first if she's got a job on the street, and she very confidently says, I don't work on the street, I need a job dancing. He says, well, I could set you up, you could try out tonight, I need to see how you work. and she said, I think she asked if she gets a cut of the drinks, the drink money that comes in. And he says, well, you have to prove yourself before you get any cut of the drinks, or we can talk about anything like that. So go get dressed. Dressing room's in the back. Go get dressed and hit the stage. We'll see what happens. Interestingly, right after that happens, we see her in her ensemble for getting on stage, and she's off to the side of the stage, kind of just doing what looks like ballet movements. Warming up to get on stage, which is really interesting. Then we get set up immediately after that, two guys who become very important throughout the rest of the movie. First of which of these two men is the janitor at the strip club. And then the second one is someone who helps him as he has an interaction. He's walking from back to front of the strip club and notices our female lead, glances to the side and trips over a guy. He's there with a woman, I guess, watching the strippers.
Hey!
Let the guy go.
He trips over him and that guy gets very angry. And then as that happens, another gentleman sitting next to him in a tweed suit steps in and says, "Hey, don't mess with the guy. You made your point, man. Don't mess with don't mess with the lowly janitor, dude. That's ridiculous. So here, sit down. Just cool off." Guy does, and so the janitor gets up, and this guy in the tweed jacket says, here's some money. Go get yourself a new shirt. These two guys end up becoming very important for the rest of the film. It's important to note. So our main character, Libby, goes to do her first dance, and as she's doing it, the guy who saved the janitor then is walking out of the club, and you can tell he's absolutely captivated by her dancing. Why not? She's absolutely gorgeous. I don't believe she gets nude during her entire dance. Like, she does burlesque. She doesn't really strip necessarily. She does a more classy version of that, and stays dressed for her dances. I guess this guy is also very much drawn to that. He goes back to his place and you see him praying on a rosary. So you can tell he's got some kind of moral hang-ups. He's trying his best. We get a number of scenes where Libby is in the strip club dealing with various customers. Some of them are polite, some of them are as sleazy as you can imagine. She has interaction with a congressman, and it seems like there are people there that know her. Eventually, though, what becomes really interesting about the story is her interaction with the other strippers, especially this one younger one. They all seem very nice. They're all really willing to bring her under the fold. They find her style of dance interesting, but it seems like they really are a big family in the back. They want to be able to kind of share that with each other. The fact that it's kind of a sisterhood behind the stage, backstage there. Really, you get then into the fact that this movie also has undertones about heroin abuse, because Libby is offered heroin by the younger dancer in the back.
Hey, if you need a fix, I can help you. What? I can hook you up.
You just keep your goddamn shit away from me.
And she says no, and then it becomes a very kind of, interactions between them get a little bit more awkward after that. And Libby, says to her, "No, I'm not interested in that. I got out of that life, and you should too," and kind of explains to her why it's a problem. And the girl, obviously being younger and less experienced, kind of just shrugs it off. But it seems as though overall her support backstage, especially by who I guess would be the dance manager, the lead woman who kind of heads the backstage operation, seems to really have Libby's back and everybody's back who works there. We get some scenes where Libby also starts to try to fight for her rights to get paid more fairly, to get a cut of the drink tabs, and she eventually does get that from the bar owner. So, it's really interesting how there's a very strong character that fights for herself, and she gets developed. You can tell in the beginning, obviously from that cold open, that she's had a lot of struggle, and she's now trying to get back on her feet, not only by doing something that I'm sure most people would prefer not to do, male or female. You probably would prefer not to strip, most of us, and for those who do, bless you. But I think it's interesting that she decides to do the burlesque dancing in a club that's obviously full of strippers, because it's not necessarily what the clientele is there to see, and some of them get a little bit rowdy about it, but most of the time people that are there to watch are very happy to see this, and it's a good change. And she's also a phenomenal dancer, it turns out. She had a professional dance background, so, and I'm not talking about Marilyn Jones. Actually, that might be the case. I don't know. She does such a good job that people don't even care that she's not as scantily clad as the rest of them, which is a really, it's a good message overall. I think they really did a good job with that. You get a lot of scenes inside the strip club of how life unfolds there for the dancers and for the patrons. It's actually kind of interesting and a little bit of what seems like a realistic inside peek to what that probably feels like. It has a real gritty feel. The lighting is all really interesting. They always have colored lighting, reds, blues, yellows. It's really, like, the set design is very good. It might have actually been in a strip club for all I know, but they did a really good job capturing the scenes inside with the lighting. There's good camera movements working throughout. It just it's really interesting to see unfold. We do get some uncomfortable scenes, of course. Libby is harassed by the police at one point. She's new in town, so she gets harassed. It seems like it's going to go down way worse than that. I guess, like, we can say, luckily she's only harassed by the police. So that's interesting because there's lots of competing interests, and one of the main undertones of this whole film is that there's a developer that's trying to purchase up all the strip clubs on the block to redo the neighborhood.
Baltimore is in the middle of a renaissance. 15 years ago, the downtown area was little more than a crime-ridden, rat-infested slum. But today, let's take a look at the big picture.
Which is something that actually ended up happening much later on, I think after this in real life, and has since changed into a completely different landscape where it used to be, by all accounts, very grimy and gritty, is now much cleaner and more friendly. Obviously not in COVID times, but other than that, it seems like a really interesting picture into how these kinds of neighborhoods worked in the 80s. By the way, this film is from 1990, so I think it was probably shot in the late 80s, and it feels very 80s. It doesn't have any 90s feel to it. Might have even been shot earlier in the 80s. It was interesting to see. So the cops let Libby go. We get a couple scenes with the guy, the developer, who's trying to develop a new municipal building and some good real estate where the clubs are. Then we have an interesting little scene between the club owner and his wife, the wife reassuring him that his club is like a national institution.
They want to buy the property. They want to put up some new damn municipal building or something.
Nobody's going to tear that club down, Sam. It's a national institution.
Not with this city, it ain't.
And that it's not going to go anywhere. Even though I guess that might be what ends up happening in the end, that's against the odds and against what actually ended up happening in history, so just worth noting. We get a nice little, I don't know if you'd call it a meet-cute scene because they'd already met, but we get a nice little scene between Libby and the janitor, and I'm sorry, I don't remember his name right now. We get a little scene at a diner where they kind of start to relate to one another, and you can tell that something is starting to grow between the two of them.
Jeez, it got cold all of a sudden, didn't it? I sit here. A cup of coffee, please.
You can obviously tell that the janitor cares very much for Libby, and you could tell that she also cares a deal for him. At her level, you can't really tell if it's platonic or if it's something more than that at this point. But, you know, this is where it kind of starts to blossom in terms of the story. Rosary guy ends up asking her constantly out on dates and finally gets a date with her as well. He has a little bit of a different energy. You could tell he likes her. You can't see exactly, again, where she's coming from with him as much. You can tell that she's attracted to him in a certain way.
Anyway, I needed a break. Thanks. I mean it.
Here you are, Lieutenant.
Oh, thanks.
But that it's not maybe the same as she feels for the janitor. They kind of set that up a little bit. At this point in the film, though, you can't really tell. It's just, that's where it ends up taking a little bit of a turn. She's kind of, they set up in the very beginning that these two were the players in the game, and then she ends up having to make this choice between the two, essentially, is where you're, at this point, led to believe. Then we find out that Rosary guy is interested, very much interested in this woman. He goes to confession.
May the Lord be in your heart and on your lips so that you may worthily confess your sins.
This isn't easy.
Tommy, what's the matter?
I met a woman. She's very pretty. She has rough edges, but there's a sweetness to her, a vulnerability.
Grabbed you by the heartstrings, huh?
And then we find out he was a priest and left the priesthood. And I think it might have been over another woman, if I'm not mistaken. But then that didn't end up working out. And now he's falling in love with this girl, and he goes to, with Libby, and he goes to explain to a priest his feelings, and the priest has to reassure him that it's all fine and natural. He's not a part of the priesthood anymore. He can do this. He's still having some misgivings, probably because she works in a strip club, which I sort of get, but also, you know, if you're in there already, you should probably get over it, because he was already in the strip club. It's not like he met her on the street and then was like, oh, you're a stripper, now I have to deal with this. He met her in the strip club. He was already in there. And you see, he's not really bringing up to the priest that he was going to see strippers, so a little inconsistent. We get a couple more really good interaction scenes between Libby and the rest of her co-workers. Again, we get back to the relationship between her and the younger girl who's, I think at this point, deciding to give up heroin and is thanking her for her help in trying to get her clean. So you could see that Libby is really sort of a motherly character at this point. I wouldn't go 100% that far, but she has those instincts, and you can tell that she really cares for the people she works with. She cares for all of these women like family at this point. She's really interested in their well-being. And then we get a scene where the janitor told these guys in the club to stop harassing Libby, and then they beat him up in the alleyway.
Christ, there's that asshole. Hey, tough guy? Fuck you!
Libby and the rest of the girls come and find him, and she brings him home to take care of him. So we can really, again, not like a Nightingale thing, but we can see that they're really having a relationship grow, and that Libby really does care for the janitor the most.
Over here, yeah.
Why are you doing this?
Because I know what it's like to reach out and find nobody there.
So Libby takes the janitor home and fixes him up. We can tell that they're really starting to get to like each other. Then we get this really creepy scene where the ex-priest guy calls his other priest friend who gave him confession earlier and starts saying, oh, Libby's not the least bit interested in me, but I'm basically obsessed with her. And you could tell it's starting to become a problem for him at that point.
Tommy, what can I do for you?
Well, I wanted to talk to you, Father. I need some advice.
You want to come by the church? We can...
No, Father, it's not a confession, just advice. It's that woman I started to tell you about. Well, she's not like the other... She's not like other women. She's, much softer, much kinder. I think about her all the time.
Well, this is the real world, Tommy.
Rosary guy goes into the strip club again to talk to Libby, and his intent is obviously ask her out. He starts talking with her at the bar, and you know she's entertaining it, and then he starts getting all rapey.
You're different from the other girls.
Look, I really better get back to work.
What's wrong? Look, I just want to see you away from here, just the two of us.
I really don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, please.
Why are you doing this to me?
I'm not just a cop. I'm really a nice guy. I'm open.
I have got to get back to work.
Look, I'm sorry.
Rosary guy starts getting all rapey out of nowhere. He can't control the fact that he feels this way about her, and starts like trying to like kiss her and grab up on her and stuff, and it's just terrible to watch. Really well done though in terms of how they're building the suspense between these characters and how they've built up Libby as a really moral and good character despite her surroundings, but this character who's supposed to be moral and good, you know, as an ex-priest, isn't, and is obviously amoral and is willing to overstep boundaries that she's properly set up. So it's interesting from that point of view that they've kind of juxtaposed those characters against one another, you know, and while this guy is successful and intelligent and may not be, you know, the janitor may not be as good as him in all of those senses, he's obviously a much more caring and better person at his core and would never do anything like that or anything to ever harm Libby. So it's really, they're building that suspense with this guy at this point. It was already a little suspenseful with that creepy conversation, but now it's even more so. Then we get the scene where Libby goes out with the senator. He obviously has noticed her, and he spends time in the strip club. Everybody knows who he is, and ends up taking her out on a date, which she entertains. Drives Rosary Guy nuts because he ends up finding out about it. He might even stalk her a little bit, but he ends up finding out about it and not being pleased. Then we get a scene where apparently the younger girl has relapsed and shoots up heroin to both her arms, goes out for a dance, and pretty much collapses on the dance floor in front of Libby as she gets back from this date.
Don't leave me here.
Shit!
And then, things start to crumble from there. Luckily, the younger girl survives. She doesn't end up dying from what could have ended up very easily being an overdose. And Libby nurses her back to health in her house.
Here, drink this.
This is your place.
Yeah.
Did you bring me here?
Mm-hmm.
I must have been really fucked up, huh?
Yeah, you were.
So now she's done that for 2 characters in the film so far. Obviously, they couldn't have set Libby up as a better person, and she just keeps continuing to grow and get better as a character, while everybody else around her just seems to be getting worse in different ways, which is really interesting in terms of a story writing point of view and the directorial point of view. Both actually very well handled. Again, with pretty good cinematography throughout. I really didn't have any complaints as far as that goes. I've mentioned this in a bunch of other movies where sound is a problem. It didn't really seem to be a problem in this film at all. Very handily crafted. A little bit later on, we get a scene where the dad of the younger heroin-addicted girl comes in and tries to get her out of the strip club. I think it's during a scene where they're opening presents during either, it's near Christmas or something like that, or they're just celebrating because I think the bar might then be in their possession for good. But they're having this celebration with each other, and then all of a sudden, the dad comes in. They have a conflict. The guy who owns the establishment ends up telling him to get out, which he does. That triggers the younger girl, who then goes home and does end up eventually having a heroin overdose and does die. Libby goes to try to find her and finds her sadly dead in her apartment. It's interesting how they strung that out over the course of the movie and kind of made it like, oh, she's getting better, oh, she's worse, oh, she's getting better, there might be some hope, and then ended up dashing it. Really, I mean, it's obviously extremely depressing, but from a story writing point of view, very well done. And by the way, the janitor accompanies her to find the younger girl and ends up comforting her now, as she did for him after he got beat up in that alley.
There was nothing you could do for me.
How do you know? You don't know anything.
Because I've been there. I've been there.
So it's a really good exchange between these 2 characters, and you can tell again that at this point they're pretty much set for each other. So a creepy rosary guy finds the janitor in the liquor store, knows that he interacts with Libby, and ends up trying to find out where Libby is. I don't think he's willing to give it up. The guy with the rosary is obviously a fanatic at this point. He's manic and extremely nuts, and he's trying to find out where she is.
Yeah. Tell me where she lives.
Hey, man.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. We're friends. We're friends. Listen to me. Now, Libby could be in trouble. Big trouble. Legal trouble. It has got something to do with the guy with the fancy car.
Ends up going to her house and finding her, and then chasing her around her apartment and being extremely, I really like you. I know you want the house. I know you want the cars. I know
the money and the jag and the clothes, and that's what you want, isn't it?
I don't know what you're talking about. God, you're hurting me.
Oh, I can do anything I want with you right now. I could kill you now, and no one would notice. No one would even care.
Doing all that, I'll give it to you. He's just obviously smothering her with his attraction, which is very creepy and very disturbing. And Libby ends up striking Rosary Guy in the head and getting away from him, luckily.
You're so good.
Damn it!
And finds the janitor out on the street, who then suggests they should go to the mission and hide out.
Libby!
Oh, God!
What's the matter?
You gotta help me.
Yeah,
I gotta get out of here. This
What's the
guy's
matter?
crazy. He wants to kill me.
Wait a minute, who wants to kill you?
This cop, Rucci. What? Who's gonna believe me? The guy's a cop.
All right,
What
now
am I
listen to
gonna
me.
do?
Now listen to me. I'll get you out of this. We gotta get you someplace safe.
Please.
We'll go to the mission.
Which is, I guess, as far as things go, not the worst idea, but also the guy was a priest, so maybe not the best idea. That's a little ham-fisted, but you can see where this is going, right? The janitor escorts Libby into the mission, into the church. She lies down on one of the pews, and I think he leaves for a quick second. The guy, rosary guy, ends up coming in and starts like freaking out at the priest, saying he can't control himself, he can't handle it, he can't help himself. He's foaming at the mouth basically at this guy, saying he's going nuts, which he very clearly is. I don't know if you can see where this is going yet. By the way, I should have mentioned that the janitor brought her to a different church than Rosary Guy goes to see the priest. You think it's going to be the same at that point, but it isn't. Eventually, to a point where the guy finds out, Rosary Guy finds out where she is, ends up coming in. There is then a confrontation between the janitor and Rosary Guy. It ends up where Rosary Guy tries to protect her because this guy is now at the point where if he can't have her, he's going to harm her, and ends up taking a bullet for Libby. So the janitor ends up dying. Very Shakespearean, pretty good story writing, very classical structure to it. The guy ends up getting arrested for this, obviously. Libby was never intending to be with Rosary Guy. She never wanted to, and nor should she have been. He was a terrible person. She's ended up being a saint throughout all of this, as was the janitor, who deserved Libby, and Libby deserved him. I think they would have been a great couple. But again, this tragedy was bound to happen because this insane man was extremely obsessed with Libby from the get-go and could not end up controlling himself. He should have been probably in either some kind of institution, or he definitely should have been in jail before then because of the way he was acting. But without that, we don't have a tragic story that is at least somewhat interesting. So Rosary Guy gets arrested, and we kind of have a closer with the developer, who now finds that he's not going to be able to secure the strip club or the block for his development purposes. We get a nice little symbolic scene where he takes his building off of his model of the block.
Franco. Let him have that block.
Throws it to his friend and then puts the strip club back down and says, we're not going to get that block. We end on Libby trying to get out of the strip club altogether and going to sign up as a real dancer.
Sign that, sweetheart, and you're an Irv Kramer dancer for 6 wonderful toe-tapping weeks.
So that's where the movie ends. We have a complete character arc for Libby, which is fantastic. And she really grew as a person, grew out of her old life and into a new one, despite her loss, tragically, in a number of different ways. Losses, multiple. We kind of come full circle with her, and we know as an audience then that she's going to be going on to a much better life, and that's how they close out the movie. On the Block. Good movie, great movie, I think, especially for its time and for any time. Don't show this to children, but it's extremely well done. I think I would highly recommend watching this movie to anybody. That's that. So the next movie I'm going to talk to you about tonight is a little movie called Stunt Woman. What a movie it is. Like I said, it kind of doesn't, in the scheme of all 3 films, it doesn't really match up to the other 2. Then again, it is fun. It really focuses around our main character here, Raquel Welch, who plays a woman named Jane Gardner in the film, opposite the leading male role played by Jean-Paul Belmondo, a French actor. This movie was French in origin and shot in France. It's funny, it's dubbed over in English, but Raquel Welch, I believe, if you pay attention closely, speaks in English the whole time, but is also dubbed over, which, I mean, I guess is okay. It doesn't really impact the viewing in any way. All in all, I think it was a pretty good movie. I don't hate it. It just wasn't as good as the other 2. Let's get into it here. So first of all, the movie was directed by Claude Zidi from France, starring, like I said, Raquel Welch and Jean-Paul Oh, excuse me, I said this wrong in the beginning. It stars Raquel Welch and Jean-Paul Belmondo, an actor out of France. He plays 2 roles in the film, but we'll get into that here in a second. It says here on the back, running time, 92 minutes. And it was made, or at least put to tape, in 1981. It was, I believe, made in 1977, if I'm not mistaken. Here it says it was released, I think, in 1981, but there's also a release date of 1990 on UAV Corp Home Video, United American Video Corp. It is not 92 minutes. The opening titles take up nearly 3 minutes, and I believe the back-end titles take probably another 3 to 5. It's more like in the 80s which is not great. We get a really interesting opening first scene. You're not introduced to anybody at first. You're just on a side of a building and obviously watching a guy scale the side of a building. To try to help a woman as the building is burning. Because the movie's called Stunt Woman, you kind of sense that this is on a sound stage. As the camera tilts in a really nice movement to follow the guy up the side of the building. You hear cut. You can see now that it's in a studio.
No, the sirens don't come now, they come later. And Mike, if I told you once, I told you 1,000 times, don't look toward the camera. I don't want to see your face. And the same goes for you, Jane. Don't face the camera, it couldn't be simpler. Now let's take it from the top again. Places. Okay, from the top. Let's go, time is money. Mike, all I want to see is the back of your hat. All right, let's make it live. Sound.
They have it go again, and then show the same camera movement. They move on to the next, and they show it's interesting and fun to show. They show the inside inner workings where they go from that building, which is on its side, so that they can get what looks like a shot of the guy crawling up from below, and then on the side as they move the camera up the side of that building so that they can follow him properly. It's just a really interesting camera motion. It shows a little bit of how they would have gotten a scene like that done, not having to actually scale the side of a vertical building, but they just lay down what looks like a building, incline, and put fire out through the windows and a fake backdrop that looks like the night sky behind it, and then have the guy crawl up the side of it so it looks like, through acting, magic of acting, it looks like he's, scaling the side of the building. So that was pretty cool to see, and then they show what happens. That was obviously the stunt work we see as then we get introduced to our two main characters, Jane and Mike, who then go to clean up as this other scene across from them is being shot. They call quiet on set, and they have to stop as they're trying to get off this building that they were scaling.
That's enough stunt work for today. Let's get on with the real McCoy.
Was telling you about. Okay, now you're up on this ledge on the 6th floor of the burning inferno. Get up there. Careful. There. Take it easy, easy. There.
Why bother a pro like me for kid stuff like this?
They're starting to shoot with the actual actors on a vertical piece just a couple feet up off the floor. That scene where he goes up to the window and saves the damsel, I guess, in distress, as it were. We get some setup with these two characters that next day they're going to be married. They're talking to their agent, and the next day they're to be married at 10 a.m.
Jackson, Jane is wondering why he was talking about 10 in the morning.
Mr. Fletcher.
I understand you need the kids tomorrow.
The car crash, 10 a.m., ready to shoot.
Out of the question.
Out of the question? What does that mean?
It means that at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, Miss Jane Gardner is going to be married to Michael Gaucher.
But the producer of the film wants them back for a car crash scene at 10 a.m. the next morning. And Raquel Welch, Jane Gardner, isn't really cool with that at all. She says, no, we're not making rearrangements. We're going to have the wedding. I'm going to be Mrs. Gaucher tomorrow morning. That's it. They transition the scene to the next day where Jane is getting dressed to go to her wedding. Mike is also dressed to go to the wedding. They get into what looks like a World War II open-top Jeep, start driving, and she has a tear in her dress. He's trying to pull her out the door real fast. Her assistant's sewing it up, and he lets slip in the middle of the driving that they're going to be on the way to a location. And she's, obviously mad, saying, location, what are you talking about? We're going to go to get married.
If you didn't drive like a maniac, maybe I could get this thing done.
Come on, if you wait till we get a location, it'll be a piece of cake.
Stop!
Why?
Stop!
Easy, come
Stop! Oh! Did you say what I think you said?
I don't know. I was talking about sewing with Doris.
Oh, no, you said something about location.
A deal is a deal.
A deal? I never meant any deal. Oh, you again.
10 o'clock car crash, 11 o'clock wedding. And if you don't let silly quarrels drive you apart, tomorrow you'll be in a gondola gliding down the Grand Canal.
And he says, oh, a deal's a deal. And the agent's in the back saying, yeah, a deal's a deal. So they go and they're going to shoot this and then get married at 11 o'clock. So they're going to go shoot this car crash scene that's part of what looks like a mafia-type film or some kind of gangster film. They pull up on a funeral, casket's coming out of the church, people are carrying it, and they pull up so hard that they had to stop shooting. They cut it.
Action! Stop! I don't believe it.
It was too loud. They had to reset and shoot it again. They're there, Jane and Mike, to shoot a scene where they are drive-by shooting up this funeral. This is where it starts to all go wrong. They get into the car and Mike is talking up his experience all the time. He's always very, very self-promoting. They get into the car. He's like, I'm going to get this done, no problem.
Hey, if it's not too much to ask just for my sake, try to get it right the first time around, okay?
Anybody could handle this stunt. You wonder why they called me in? Imagine getting a pro like me for this.
The whole thing is he needs to pull around a corner and pull up to the camera as close as he can. And Raquel Welch's character, Jane, has to shoot out the side window Tommy gun at the people in front of the church. They do it once. The director insults him for saying, oh, I told you close to the camera. What are you doing?
You fathead! I told you to come close to the camera. That close to the camera.
And the guy gets all upset, thinking that professional, I can do this, no problem. I'll show him close.
I'm gonna pull up so close it'll scare the pants off him.
Resets and does it again. This time, as you already could tell, he overshoots it. He says the brakes don't work. Crashes through the front of a trailer on set, which is really funny. Luckily, he doesn't kill anybody. Rolls this old, what looks like a very old Rolls Royce or something like that. Rolls it a couple times.
Slow down!
The brakes!
Mike! Slow!
He and Jane are teetering on this edge. Even after this mistake, his pride still gets the better of him as Jane starts to poke him for his mistake, saying, oh, you're so good, you're so good.
Frank Amateur is giving advice.
Nobody calls me that.
What, son of a bitch?
No, amateur. Son of a bitch I can take, but not amateur.
And he goes, I'll make you eat your words. As he turns to say that, the car teeters over the edge and smashes.
And this pro's gonna make you eat your words!
Into a fountain pool, no less. Not looking good. We wake up with them in the next scene in the hospital. Apparently, Jane had come to a little after Mike, and Mike had arranged, I guess through his agent, to get a priest there to try to marry them while they were both in the hospital beds, because, of course, they were supposed to get married today, which is obviously not ideal at this point.
Do you, Michael Gaucher, take as your lawfully... Michael Gaucher is this one. Ah.
So the priest goes and keeps asking, will you take this man? She keeps saying no. I would too. She keeps saying no. She keeps saying no again. This character, just like in the last story, played by, Jane, played by Raquel, is very strong, has a lot of agency, and in this moment is saying, no, I don't want to marry this guy. He's pig-headed and stupid and overconfident, and he almost killed me, so let's not do that. And says no. We get to them in rehab later. This guy is full of himself, but he's also very playful and very fun, very quick-witted, and actually really funny in the movie. The character Mike is obviously well-meaning, but he's not a great guy. He's not the worst guy either. He just doesn't think enough. He obviously gets in over his head and is just a little bit overconfident. The rest of the film kind of deals with them getting jobs either together or separately. Jane getting her own different stunt gigs every once in a while, and also finding a new man in a producer that's on set. She's very, again, the movie's called Stunt Woman, and she's essentially the main character. It also kind of follows the character Mike a great deal because of his wanton pursuit of Jane. So he, is consistently after her, despite the fact that she's kind of moved on from this whole thing. She doesn't really want to have anything to do with him anymore, except for in a professional way, and maybe not even then. We get a couple different scenes where they go on different jobs together, or again separately. One of which, Mike is taking a job doing a quick, a stunt swing as a gorilla at a grocery store for a product display or for a product debut.
There we are! There we are! Our super gorilla goes ape over Panzani, because Panzani is good for you. Now it's super duper sales time.
He goes and decides, and it's not, he says he's professional and everything, but I think after this accident people don't take him seriously, so he kind of has to get any work he can. He's not really wanting for work. He finds things fast enough. But this is one of the first things he does after the accident. He's in this gorilla suit. He sees Jane too when he's at the supermarket doing this thing. Tries to chase her, but he can't. There's a nice little funny scene where he tries to jump off the top of a display and busts his ass in the vegetable case off of what looks like a trampoline. can't see. He obviously jumps off a trampoline and then falls flat on his face. I mean, obviously there's not going to be a trampoline in the middle of this grocery store, so I don't know how you get the bounce. Anyway, I'm going to sum this up pretty easily though. Most of the movie deals with them, again, going to these different jobs, and him being still really into her, but her having tried to move on, going and dating other guys, other producers, things like that. We see a couple different funny scenes where they either mess up things together or he messes up a little bit, but most of them end up going fine. I mean, at the end, you know, it's not like they really do any more detrimental damage to their careers after this. So Jean-Paul plays another character named Bruno Ferrari, who is a pretty offensive gay stereotype.
Oh, you. You're enough to drive a poor girl crazy.
Down, Bruno, down. You keep away.
Kind of reminds me of, I think they were going for Liberace or something like that, but they try to pull it off, and it's way more offensive. Also, it was made in France in the 70s, so I don't know how sensitive the French people were or were not to gay people at that point. I really have no historical knowledge on that. In film, it was obviously something that we can still see happening. Yet through this offensive gay stereotype, as you know, Bruno Ferrari is on set for a couple of these different scenes that happen as they need the stunt work from the character Mike. They do some good work though, putting them on screen together in a few points. It's interesting camera work they were able to do.
We had you fooled, didn't we? Thought you saw yourself in a mirror, huh?
I guess they either used, you know, they must have used stunt people. I know there's some camera tricks that you can do, and they used back in the day to be able to overlay the same person on screen twice. So it was interesting. We get a scene where Mike goes to a party where Jane is to try to get her back and to try to talk to her. It's a very important party with, I think, what ends up, you find out, or ends up being a count or something, like a French count, but he's also a film producer. He goes, she's at this party, you know, with him as a date. Mike shows up to try to win her back and to talk to her, and
Oh, yes. Jane, it's me.
Oh, no more for me.
It's me, Mike. What are you doing in this summer camp?
I might ask you the same question.
ends up getting found out and having to run away.
It's him! It's him! Don't let him go! Stop him! Stop him! Don't let him get away! Stop him!
What the devil is?
Pretty funny. Crashes the party in tremendous fashion. Gets chased by the cops out. Little establishing stuff like that. Nothing crazy. For the 70s, it must have been really something. Through today's eyes, I guess I'm a little bit jaded, so it's not as exciting as it probably would have been had I seen it back then. Mike convinces Jane to do another job with him, where they are in some kind of sci-fi picture, and they're in this military-looking / Batmobile-looking jet car. And he does a ejector seat launch of Jane into a net, which is a pretty cool scene.
Hang on to your hat.
And must have been cool to shoot actually on scene. I don't know how that was done. I'd like to find out because it looked pretty real. If it wasn't, I'd love to know how they did that because it was pretty interesting. And that car was really cool too, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it was goofy, but it was still pretty cool. So we get to a scene where Mike is working as the stuntman for Bruno Ferrari. He is supposed to fall down this set of steps like multiple times, which he does, and he has to keep climbing to the top.
Action!
No, not until I finish my last cigarette.
Hold it! Cut! Look, Bruno,
yes?
you have...
Rolling?
Let's go, Mike. That's right. my punch, you are holding up the whole works. Huh?
Don't worry, this is the good one.
And Jane is there on set to watch this all unfold. Obviously, Mike is getting the crap kicked out of him from going down these stairs and then having to go up this long stone staircase again and again and again. She ends up feeling sorry for him. So, obviously, because that sucks.
Mike? Are you okay? What are you doing here?
I haven't finished my last cigarette yet.
Is it that bad?
Well, could be worse. But if it were, I'd be dead.
Here. Wait. I'll do it.
It's not a great way to spend your life, but you are a stuntman, so I guess that's what happens. So, she feels bad for him, helps him, and then there's another scene with a party where some more misadventures happen. Nothing too interesting. Basically, at the very end scene, we have Raquel Welch about to marry this other film producer so she can finally get on with her life. But you can tell she still has hang-ups over Mike, who, in the midst of the end of this wedding, ends up busting through the wall, somehow swinging through a rope with a gorilla suit on. And then at the very, very end, we get a little ridiculous scene where after he'd done that and gotten Jane to say no to marrying the other film producer, they both climb back up the vine that he swung through the building, or through the window, or whatever the hell, into the room. They climb that back out, and they're up on the roof now. There's food on a table, and a bunch of baboons or monkeys eating it. They both look at it and laugh, and then we get basically a scene from Grease where they fly off into the sky. Mike snaps his fingers.
Where are we going, Mike?
To start a little zoo of our own.
And then, out of nowhere, another vine just drops from the sky, and this overlaid butterfly flies over magically. They start to take off on this rope that's hanging out of the sky. And Jane goes, "Where are we going, Mike?" And he goes, "We're going to go start a little zoo of our own." And that's how the movie ends. She ends up back with somebody who put her in physical danger. Although the character of Jane was very strong, and again, exhibited a lot of agency throughout, I don't like the way it ended up. Even though she did make that choice to stay with him instead of the Count, who I guess was a little bit less loving, not as fun, not as enjoyable to be around. He was a stable choice as a person, and they were trying to show that Mike wasn't nearly as stable, having to go from job to job, to keep picking up stunt work, being too cocky and bold in the way he carries out his work. It ended up being, I guess, a decent match, and probably better off than her being with a producer, I guess? I don't know. I don't really love the way the film ended. It was fun throughout to some degree, if not a little boring and a little dry in some parts. There's a lot of talking that doesn't lead to anything happening, really. Overall, it wasn't so bad, but it wasn't so good either. And there wasn't anything that would make it so bad it's good, unless you really like funny dubbing, or, I don't know, there's worse ways to spend your time. And, not for nothing, they were both enjoyable to watch on screen. Raquel Welch looks great in the movie. That's all there is to really say about that. Watch it or don't watch it. I think it's okay, but if you don't like movies from the 70s, you probably shouldn't watch it. The last movie I'm going to talk to you about is Touch and Go. Touch and Go was an Australian film shot in 1971. It was released on VidAmerica VHS in 1985, quite a bit later. As I said, it stars, first of all, Wendy Hughes, and a cast of 6 other, at their time, top-tier Australian actresses who were all in the prime of their careers as the femme fatales, all members of a crime group, or how do I put it? They have their own robber crew. So this group of 6 female thieves, larceny experts, their whole thing is they rob banks, they rob resorts, they rob casinos, they rob department stores. So Wendy Hughes in this movie plays a character named Ava. Chantel Contori plays a character named Fiona. Carmen Duncan plays Millicent. Janine Drynan plays Gina. Liddy Clark plays Helen. And Christina Moore plays Sue. Obviously, I don't really know a lot about these actresses, not being from Australia. But from what I've read, they were all very big time there. They were all in their late 20s, early 30s when they shot this. All very good-looking women. I'm not gonna lie, I thought they were great. Very good actresses. I thought they were fantastic throughout the movie. And also, I believe the guy who sings the opening title song, the opening theme, which is also called Touch and Go, was a guy who was featured in the film named Johnny English, if I'm not mistaken, or John English. Not Mr. Bean, not Roland Atkinson. We open the film on a robbery in progress. A car pulling up to a heist crew that's emptying out a safe, leaving, ditching the car, all to this great opening theme song that shares the same name as the film. They ditched the car in a parking garage, as we've seen in a number of films since. And switch cars, go to their hideout location. As they get to their hideout, they start disrobing from their masks and everything. We find out these aren't men robbers, they're women robbers. And they are quite proficient. So we get the next scene after they've celebrated their robbery with the character Millie at her house with her husband eating breakfast and talking about the robbery that's now in the morning paper.
Listen to this. 3 masked men overpowered the watchman at Mortimer's department store last night.
I know, I heard it on the radio.
One of them, a skilled safebreaker, opened the security vault. In a military-style operation, they escaped after a high-speed chase.
Military style?
With an estimated $30,000.
Really?
She's smirking as he mentions, these bunch of what must have been men robbed the place. She's giving like little winks and nods to that. He's going into basically what amounts to being a for comedy's sake misogynist divergence into talking about how he'd have a lot of them in the army if he could, because they'd all be terrific soldiers, and she's very flattered by this, but also playing it pretty cool so that it seems like she's not giving anything away necessarily. Just poking fun at this situation, little bits here and there, just prodding, but obviously he wouldn't know, and he wouldn't have known the difference. He doesn't think that they would be, his wife especially, or her, or any of her friends, or any woman at that point would be capable of it, but that's the whole point of the movie. This group of ladies is very capable, they're very proficient, and they're very skilled at their craft. I guess he makes a good point in saying that their skills would probably be better served elsewhere. Perhaps that's true. It's still pretty badass. I think it was awesome to see that they were out there doing this crazy shit. We get the next scene where we find the character Gina works at her own hardware store.
Oh, Steve!
She's busy doing her thing. We hear a cop siren in the back, and we think, oh, is somebody going to come for her right now? Are they found out already? But no, Gina is dating a police officer, I guess to get inside intel, but also because she seems to like the guy. I don't think she really let in her crew on that whole notion. I think they find out much later that she's dating a cop. She seems to be able to keep it separate and fine. He seems to be a nice guy. She's doing pretty well for herself there with her shop, and also with her skilled craft at being a perfect thief. So we get the scene where, I made a mistake. Gina's with her husband at the breakfast table, and Millie is the one who has the cop boyfriend. We get a scene with them at breakfast talking about how they're not making enough money on these heists and they need to get a bigger score. But they say if they need to do a bigger score, they need to take on a bigger team. So we get a couple scenes between them at breakfast and then them at the gym trying to find out what they might want to do. And so they decide that they're going to bring on some more people, even though that means some more risk. It also means that they can go for a much better score. Then from there, they choose this score, which is going to be this premier casino and resort on the Gold Coast.
Welcome to Australia's luxury playground, the Riviera of the Pacific. Here in this tropic jewel of the Whitsunday Passage is a palm tree paradise cut off from care, but with all the amenities of modern life. Here at the Surf Air Hotel, we have our own bank, post office, exclusive shops, jewelry store, nightclub, bars and restaurants. We even have a TAB betting office.
That they're going to try to hit. They go do a stakeout of the bank there. They go to find out that there is an extra casino vault, and their plan is to, after they've acquired a crew, to go by boat and hit this place at night, take everything off the island, and not to be seen. It's a pretty straightforward heist film in terms of them setting up, getting the crew members, them getting the gear they need for the mission. Nothing too special there. There was a lot of little fun comedic moments, but nothing too out of the ordinary. It's a lot of setup. They end up taking down the casino. They rob the bank on location, and they also get the casino vault from the manager's office. They take it all. They run into problems as they go to leave the island. They run into a hiccup. I think the boat that they needed never showed up on time, and they weren't able to escape. They were pursued by police officers, so that was a bit of a problem. So they infiltrate the island by scuba suit. So most of them are clad in those cool 70s era all black scuba suits with like yellow trim that we're used to seeing from like movies like Thunderball. They weren't lying when on the back they actually said this was pretty James Bondish. It really is. There's a good sense of structure for a heist film. It stays fairly interesting throughout. I mean, it's again, it's a movie from the 70s, so it's not as exciting as some of the movies that we would watch today. It's a little bit more slow and methodical. It's tuned to its budget, of course, because films back then really weren't as high budget, especially ones like this. They were basically just scouting locations and shooting on location, just making sure that they had the correct wardrobes and things like that. It wasn't like they had any real special effects for this movie or anything like that. It could have been fairly low budget to shoot, I'm sure it was. You got a lot of quality on screen from the nuances in the acting. All the acting was good. We got some funny scenes between Gina and her husband, where I remember one scene where he says, "I'm not a misogynist, but women can't be gardeners. There's just some jobs women can't do."
I say we keep Frank. Unless, what about a woman gardener?
Don't be ridiculous, Fiona. I'm not a male chauvinist, but there are certain things that women simply can't do.
Rubbish.
And that's in the midst of when they're looking for a heist. And he shows Gina the newspaper, which has he goes, "Oh, well, for instance, who ever heard of a female telephone line worker? Or telegraph line worker," he calls them, because that's what they called it back then.
Look, here's a perfect example.
I'm not interested. What is it?
A young woman up a pole.
Pardon?
Up a bloody telegraph pole. Now, can you imagine anything more absurd and ridiculous than a woman telegraph linesman?
Let me see that.
Shows the newspaper article, and that's another person that signs on to the crew. Gina is no idiot. She says, "Oh, that's the kind of strong person we need on our crew." They get her to join. They get the others to join. Everybody's trustworthy. They don't come to any problems there, and they all make a great team together. They all kind of fill in each other's weaknesses, and they all seem to really communicate well together and work together as a team. We get back to the island where they're committing their heist. Their boat doesn't show up on time for them to leave, so they just happen to get this one group of fishermen coming on a sport fishing boat. They end up taking that off and leaving the island. There's a quick moment of suspense after where they're en route to drop the money at a safe location, and the cops pull them over. There's a little bit of tension. Being very good-looking women, they're able to get out of it, luckily.
Where have you come from?
Banksville.
How many days were you there?
Only since Thursday.
Didn't stay long, eh?
No, we thought we'd move on down to surface. Liable to be more talent there, if you know what I mean.
Having a girl's week off.
Well, I can see you know what I mean.
And they end up taking the money to their hideaway. And I believe it's at Gina's house, where we've established in the beginning of the film they have this gardener named Frank.
Oh, what the hell was that? Frank!
I tripped on the hoe, I'm sorry.
You smashed me greenhouse.
Well, it wasn't me, it was the hoe.
Well, some glass in the shed would be too much to ask you to fix it.
All right. It's only an accident.
Jerusalem, those are my artichokes.
Who isn't as efficient as some. He kind of reminds me of the guy from The Mighty Boosh. The guy who plays Vince on The Mighty Boosh. He looks a little bit like him. He kind of acts like him. He's pretty good. So once they get the money in garbage bags in the back of their car, they leave it in the garage, and everybody goes their separate ways to divvy up the money later because they need a safe place just to stow it for the time being. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, at one point they had asked Frank to take the stuff somewhere in the car or somewhere in the house to the dump, because back in the day you used to have to take your garbage to the dump yourself. There wasn't really garbage cleanup, and I'm sure in parts of Australia there wasn't, and I know in parts of the United States you used to have to take your own garbage to the dump. They asked Frank to take the stuff to the dump, and it's obviously he takes the car with the money. They're afraid that the husband is going to come home and find it, but he doesn't, because I'm going to call him Vince, but Frank had already taken the money with him to go throw it to the dump. So the women get all panicked. They end up before all that, the money originally, before they end up dropping it off to what they think is a safe place at the house, is in a van lent to them by a friend of theirs, who ends up taking the van back.
So what do we do now?
Go home.
With or without the van?
Well, I think we should lock it and leave it here. Yes, that's best, until we work out what's to be done. Toilet block, library, cookies!
Well, without telling the people that she lent it to, by the way, that she's taking it back, and while the money is still stashed in the ceiling of the van, they end up getting the van back from the woman. Then drop it at Gina's house.
Okay. Great. George should be getting on the plane by now. We're safe at last.
And then Gina ends up saying, you gotta take this stuff down to the trash or whatever, or her husband does, and then Frank takes the money to the dump. They all panic when they find this out. Part of the movie is the suspenseful, before cell phones. Obviously, this is way before cell phones, so part of the suspense of the film is after they dropped the money, the group had split off into the 3 and 3. It was a group of 6 women. They split off with the 3 originals and the 3 new going their separate ways, but the 3 new members are all together at a gym where some of them met together. They're thinking that they're getting cut out of this because the money went with another person. Meanwhile, all these capers on the side are going on. They're calling and calling, but not getting through because people are on the phone, and there's no busy signals or anything like that, or there's no way to engage another phone caller at that time. So they keep calling, getting busy signals, or nobody's answering. So they think they're getting beat on the deal. They think they're getting beat on their work, even though they're not. All this stuff is going on at once and unfolding all at once. They all get back together once they all get in touch with one another and find out, by I think talking to the husband, that Frank had taken the car with the money then to the dump. So now they're all freaking out. I'm summarizing this pretty quickly. They end up going to the dump. Frank pulls over to make a phone call or something like that, Frank makes it to the dump. They're chasing him, trying to get there first. They end up getting there, and he looks before he throws the stuff out and finds out that it's money in there. And doesn't end up throwing the money away. You think that's going to lead to the ladies getting their money back. They get to the dump after Frank leaves, being chased by police because they also were speeding to get there. They wanted to make sure they got there in time. They were too late. Luckily, one of the cops, or the cop that ends up following them, is the boyfriend from earlier. So luckily, that ends up having no consequence. Frank then goes, after he finds this money, he goes to a payphone. Call his, girlfriend. Calls and says, now we don't have to get married.
Mabel, guess what? No, we don't have to get married. Guess what?
Hey!
Frank!
Hey!
Frank, what do you mean, not get married? You're a gardener, not a gynecologist.
I don't know what that means. They didn't really set that up earlier. As he's in the phone booth talking, you see behind him the 2 people come out of the bushes and steal his car with all the money in it. And as he runs out to go catch them, You know, you hear his girlfriend on the phone, what do you mean we're not getting married? That's where the movie ends. Just before that, though, we get a quick scene at the garbage dump where the women realize they're not going to find this money. It's not there. They find a newspaper clipping or a magazine or something about another casino. It ends where they're kind of almost setting up a sequel that they're going to go and knock over this other casino. And they say, how about what are you doing a month from now? They said, why wait a month? Let's just do it, let's just do it. And they set up that this group of people are going to go and continue on their way, robbing up and down the coast. That was touch and go. Got through that a little faster than I thought I would. It's a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it. Really would suggest it. It's a great little piece of history from the 70s. And I honestly haven't seen too many movies from Australia. So it was really fun and interesting just to see an Australian cast. Typically you think of the Mad Max movies or something like that, but it was really refreshing. I liked the message. I liked the theme. I liked the heist. I liked the acting. I thought it was a good movie. Honestly, there wasn't really a bad one in the bunch tonight. Some of these, I think, if I had to pick a best in an order, I'd probably say On the Block was the best movie, followed by Touch and Go, followed by Stunt Woman. None of them were bad. That might be the most disappointing thing of all. I didn't actually get to watch a funny bad movie in this case. Just 3 pretty good movies and 1 really good movie. And that's the takeaway, I guess. And that's gonna happen now and again. If it was gonna be 3 good movies, I'm glad it was these 3. Thank you for watching Video Hell Show. Appreciate you tuning in, as always. I try to get a couple more of these shot in the next couple weeks so I can keep a consistent upload schedule here just before it gets a little busy going into the Christmas and holiday season and what have you. I'll probably be able to shoot some then as well, and I'll try to get something themed appropriately, and if not, tough. Again, thanks for watching Video Hell Show. My name is Frank, and I will talk to you again soon. See you, everybody.